The rain hammered against the large windows of Rosie's diner with a relentless rhythm that matched the exhaustion Sarah Martinez felt deep in her bones. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday night, and the fluorescent lights inside the 24-hour establishment cast a harsh artificial glow over the worn red vinyl booths and checkered linoleum floor. Sarah wiped down the counter for what felt like the 100th time that shift, her feet aching in the cheap sneakers she'd bought from a discount store 3 months ago. At 28 years old, Sarah had been working at Rosie's for nearly 4 years. It wasn't the life she'd imagined when she'd moved to New York City from a small town in Texas, full of dreams about making it in the big city. But dreams had a way of fading when rent was due, and the electric bill needed paying. Now her aspirations had shrunk to something more manageable. Get through the shift, get home safely, sleep for 6 hours, and do it all over again. "Coffee, hun," she called out to the elderly man sitting in booth 7, the only customer left in the diner. Mr. Chen came in every Thursday night, ordered the same egg sandwich, and left exactly a $5 tip. He was one of the constants in Sarah's unpredictable world. "Please, Sarah, you're an angel," Mr. Chen replied with a gentle smile, his weathered hands wrapped around his newspaper. Sarah poured the steaming coffee into a clean mug, the familiar aroma providing a small comfort in the monotony of the late shift. Outside, the streets of Queens glistened with rainwater, reflecting the neon signs from the bodega across the street and the distant glow of Manhattan's skyline. Car headlights occasionally swept past, their beams cutting through the November darkness. The bell above the door chimed, drawing Sarah's attention. A woman stumbled inside, and Sarah's first impression was one of stark contradiction. The woman wore an expensive-looking camel-colored coat, the kind Sarah had seen in store windows she could never afford to enter, but it was soaked through and hung awkwardly on her frame. Her dark hair was plastered to her face, and her designer heels clicked unevenly on the floor as if she could barely walk. But it was what the woman carried that made Sarah's breath catch. A baby wrapped in a blue blanket, couldn't have been more than a few months old. The infant was crying, a desperate wail that immediately tugged at something deep in Sarah's chest. "Please," the woman gasped, her accent thick. "Italian," Sarah thought. "Table. I need table." Sarah quickly grabbed a menu and gestured to the nearest booth. "Of course, right this way. Are you okay? Do you need me to call someone?" The woman shook her head violently, clutching the baby tighter. "No. No police. No calling. Please." Her eyes were wide, and Sarah could see she was trembling. Whether from cold or fear, she couldn't tell. Okay, Sarah said softly, her waitress instincts kicking in alongside something more maternal, more human. "No calls. What can I get you?" "Coffee, black, and water. Please, for baby bottle." The woman fumbled with a designer diaper bag, pulling out an expensive-looking bottle. Sarah nodded and hurried behind the counter, her mind racing. Something was very wrong. In 4 years of working the night shift, she'd seen plenty of unusual situations. Drunk college students, exhausted truck drivers, people having mental health crises, domestic disputes that spilled into her diner. But this felt different. The woman's fear was palpable, and the baby's cries were growing more desperate. She prepared the coffee quickly and filled the bottle with lukewarm water, testing the temperature on her wrist the way she'd seen mothers do. When she returned to the booth, the woman was rocking the baby mechanically, her eyes fixed on the rain-streaked window. "Here you go," Sarah said gently, setting down the items. "The water should be the right temperature. Is there anything else?" "How much?" the woman interrupted, reaching into her coat pocket with a shaking hand. "It's just coffee and water, so..." The woman slapped a $100 bill on the table. "Keep all of it. I need bathroom. Watch him. Please, just 1 minute." Before Sarah could respond, the woman thrust the baby into her arms and rushed toward the restroom at the back of the diner, the diaper bag left behind in the booth. Sarah stood there, stunned, holding the crying infant who couldn't have weighed more than 12 pounds. The baby's face was red from crying, tiny fists waving in the air. Hey, it's okay, little one," Sarah whispered, automatically beginning to sway as she'd seen mothers do. She'd never had children of her own, never even been in a serious relationship long enough to consider it, but something instinctive took over. She grabbed the bottle from the table and gently offered it to the baby's mouth. The infant latched on immediately, the crying stopping as suddenly as it had started. Big brown eyes looked up at Sarah with such trust it made her heart ache. She found herself smiling despite the strangeness of the situation. Mr. Chen looked up from his newspaper. "You're a natural, Sarah." She laughed nervously. "I don't know about that. This is definitely a first for me." Minutes passed. The baby drank contentedly, and Sarah found herself studying his features. Thick, dark hair, olive-toned skin, those expressive brown eyes. He was beautiful, dressed in what looked like expensive baby clothes, a small designer logo visible on his onesie. 5 minutes became 10. The woman hadn't returned from the bathroom. "That's strange," Sarah murmured, a knot of worry forming in her stomach. Still holding the baby, she walked to the back of the diner and knocked on the bathroom door. "Miss, are you all right in there?" No response. She knocked again, harder. "Miss?" Silence. Sarah's heart began to race. She looked down at the baby in her arms, now peacefully dozing with the bottle still in his mouth, then back at the bathroom door. Something was very wrong. "Mr. Chen, can you watch him for just 1 second?" She called out. The elderly man stood up immediately and came over, his expression concerned. Sarah carefully transferred the sleeping baby into his experienced arms. Mr. Chen had mentioned having grandchildren many times, and tried the bathroom door handle. It was unlocked. The bathroom was empty. Sarah's mind reeled. How? There was only one door, no windows. The woman had simply vanished. "She's gone," Sarah said, more to herself than to Mr. Chen. "She just left him." She rushed to the front of the diner, looking out into the rain-soaked street. Nothing. No sign of the mysterious woman in the expensive coat. The street was empty except for a few parked cars and the steady downpour. When Sarah turned back, her stomach dropped. Through the rain-streaked window, she saw a black SUV pull up in front of the diner. Then another. The vehicles were expensive, gleaming even in the rain, with tinted windows that revealed nothing of who was inside. "Mr. Chen, take the baby to the kitchen." "Now," Sarah said, her voice tight within fear she didn't fully understand but felt in her bones. The elderly man didn't argue. He'd lived in New York long enough to recognize danger when he saw it. The bell above the door chimed again. 3 men in dark suits entered, water dripping from their coats. They weren't police. Sarah could tell that immediately. Police had a certain bearing, carried themselves differently. These men moved like predators, their eyes scanning the diner with cold efficiency. "Evening," Sarah said, forcing her voice to remain steady as she stepped behind the counter. "What can I get you, gentlemen?" The tallest one, with graying hair and a scar above his left eyebrow, ignored her question. "We're looking for a woman. Dark hair, expensive coat. She might have been carrying something. Has anyone like that been in here tonight?" Sarah's hands were shaking, so she kept them below the counter where the men couldn't see. Every instinct she had screamed that these men were dangerous, that whatever they wanted with that woman and baby, it wasn't good. "It's been pretty quiet tonight," she lied, proud that her voice didn't waver. "Just regulars. Coffee?" The man's eyes narrowed. He didn't believe her, but he couldn't prove otherwise. He gestured to his companions and they spread out, one checking the bathroom, another peering into the kitchen where Sarah could see Mr. Chen had wisely hidden with the baby. "This is a public establishment," Sarah said, channeling every ounce of false confidence she could muster. "Unless you're here to order something, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." It was a bluff, and everyone in the room knew it. But something in Sarah's defiant stance must have given the man pause. He studied her for a long moment, and Sarah felt like he could see right through her, see the terrified waitress beneath the brave facade. Finally, he reached into his pocket. Sarah's heart nearly stopped, but he only pulled out a business card, placing it on the counter. "If you remember anything, call this number. There's a reward for information." His voice was smooth, almost pleasant, which somehow made him more frightening. "Good evening, miss." The 3 men left as quickly as they'd arrived, climbing back into their SUVs. Sarah waited until the vehicles had driven away before she allowed herself to breathe. Her legs felt weak and she had to grip the counter to steady herself. "Mr. Chen?" she called out shakily. The elderly man emerged from the kitchen, the baby still sleeping peacefully in his arms. "Sarah, you need to call the police." I don't know," Sarah said, her mind racing. The woman had specifically said no police. And those men, whoever they were, they clearly had resources, connections. What if calling the police put the baby in more danger? She walked back to the booth where the woman had been sitting. The $100 bill was still there, along with the designer diaper bag. With trembling hands, Sarah opened it. Inside were the usual baby items: diapers, wipes, extra bottles, a pacifier. But there were also things that made Sarah's blood run cold. A stack of cash, easily several $1,000s. A woman's diamond bracelet that looked like it cost more than Sarah made in a year, and a smartphone expensive and sleek with a cracked screen. She picked up the phone, and it lit up, despite the damage. No password. The screen showed dozens of missed calls from numbers without names, just strings of digits. Text messages in Italian that Sarah couldn't read. And one photo, set as the wallpaper. A beautiful young woman with dark hair, smiling radiantly while holding the very baby now sleeping in Mr. Chen's arms. Sarah's hands shook as she scrolled through the phone. She didn't speak Italian, but she recognized certain words that appeared repeatedly in the messages. Pericolo, danger. Aiuto, help. Salvalo, save him. Oh God, Sarah whispered. What did she do? What did she give me? Mr. Chen sat down heavily in the booth, still holding the baby with practiced ease. Sarah, this child needs proper care. You have to call someone. But who? Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. Those men, whoever they are, they're looking for him. And his mother. She couldn't bring herself to finish the thought, but a horrible certainty was growing in her mind. As if on cue, the sound of sirens filled the night air. But they weren't coming toward the diner. They were distant, several blocks away maybe. Sarah's instincts, honed by years of living in New York, told her something bad had happened. She grabbed the remote and turned on the small TV mounted in the corner of the diner, switching to the local news. It took a few minutes of commercial breaks before the breaking news banner appeared. Developing story tonight in Queens. Police are investigating a scene on 47th Avenue where a woman's body was discovered. Details are limited at this time, but sources tell us the victim appears to have been the victim of a crime. The area has been cordoned off, and detectives are treating this as suspicious. We'll bring you more information as it becomes available. The address they mentioned was 2 blocks away, 2 blocks from the diner. Sarah looked at the sleeping baby, then at the phone still clutched in her hand, then at Mr. Chen's worried face. She's gone, Sarah said, her voice breaking. She came here to save him, and they found her anyway. All the more reason to call the authorities, Mr. Chen said gently. This baby needs protection that you can't provide, Sarah. This is bigger than us. Sarah knew he was right. Logically, she knew the smart thing. The legal thing was to call the police, explain everything, and let the system handle it. But when she looked at that innocent face, so peaceful in sleep, she thought about what would happen to him. Foster care? Returned to whoever those men in suits worked for? And what if the police were involved with those men? In her years in New York, she'd learned that money and power could corrupt anything. The woman's last words echoed in her mind. Watch him. Please. It hadn't been a request. It had been a plea from a dying mother. Mr. Chen, Sarah said slowly, an insane idea forming in her mind. What if you didn't see anything tonight? What if you left before that woman came in? The elderly man's eyes widened. Sarah, no. You can't be thinking. She trusted me, Sarah interrupted, surprised by the conviction in her own voice. A complete stranger, and she trusted me with her baby, with her son. Those men, whoever they are, they want him for a reason, and it's not to keep him safe. I could see it in their eyes. This is madness, Mr. Chen said, but his voice lacked conviction. He was looking at the baby too, at the innocent life caught in circumstances beyond anyone's control. I know, Sarah admitted. I know it's crazy, but just for tonight, just until I can figure out what's really going on. Please, Mr. Chen, if anyone asks, you were already gone when all this happened. The old man was silent for a long moment, the weight of the decision hanging between them. Finally, he sighed deeply. I was never here tonight. I went home after my sandwich, before the rain got too bad. Relief flooded through Sarah, followed immediately by terror at what she'd just committed to. Thank you. Mr. Chen carefully transferred the baby back to Sarah's arms. The infant stirred slightly but didn't wake. But Sarah, you listen to me. If those men come back, if anyone threatens you, you call the police immediately. Do you understand? This child's life is important, but so is yours. I will, Sarah promised, though she wasn't sure she could keep it. After Mr. Chen left, leaving his usual $5 tip on the table like this was any other Thursday night, Sarah locked the diner door and flipped the sign to closed. Her hands were still shaking as she gathered up everything from the booth, the diaper bag, the phone, the money, the bracelet. She stuffed it all into the bag and looked around the diner one more time. This was insane. This was the most reckless thing she'd ever done in her careful, cautious life. She was a waitress from a small town in Texas who kept her head down and didn't make waves. And now she was essentially kidnapping a baby. or saving him. She wasn't sure which. The baby stirred in her arms and made a small sound. Not quite a cry. Sarah looked down at him, and those big brown eyes opened, looking up at her with such trust. "I don't know what I'm doing," she whispered to him. "I don't know anything about babies or who you are or why those men want you. But your mom, she wanted you safe, so I'm going to keep you safe. Somehow." The baby yawned, a tiny, perfect yawn, and Sarah felt something crack open in her chest, something maternal and fierce and protective. She grabbed her threadbare coat from the hook by the kitchen, carefully wrapped the baby in his blanket, and stepped out into the rain. Her apartment was only 8 blocks away, but it felt like the longest walk of her life. Every car that passed made her tense, every person on the street a potential threat. By the time she climbed the 3 flights of stairs to her studio apartment in Astoria, Sarah was soaked through and exhausted. The baby had woken up and was starting to fuss, probably hungry again. Her apartment was tiny, a studio with a kitchenette, a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in, and a main room that served as bedroom, living room, and dining room all at once. It wasn't much, but it was hers, and it was clean. Sarah set the baby down gently on her bed, surrounding him with pillows so he couldn't roll off, and quickly locked the door behind her, engaging both the deadbolt and the chain. Only then did she allow herself to collapse against the door, the full weight of what she'd done hitting her. "What have I done?" she whispered to the empty room. "What have I done?" The baby's cries grew louder, bringing her back to the immediate crisis. Right. Babies needed things. Food, clean diapers, sleep. She could figure out the rest later. Sarah dug through the diaper bag, finding formula, bottles, and everything she needed. Following the instructions on the formula container, she prepared a bottle, testing it on her wrist like before. The baby drank eagerly, and Sarah found herself sitting on her worn-out couch, this tiny stranger in her arms, feeling more terrified and purposeful than she'd ever felt in her life. While he ate, she examined the other contents of the bag more carefully. The cash was bound in neat stacks. She counted quickly and stopped at $20,000. The bracelet was definitely real, diamonds catching the light from her cheap lamp. And the phone? Sarah picked it up again, scrolling through with one hand while she held the bottle with the other. Most of the messages were in Italian, but she found a few in English. One thread caught her attention. Messages from a contact labeled only V. "Where are you? Isabella, answer me. They know. Get to the safe house. Please just let me know you're alive. If anything happens to you, I swear." The messages stopped 3 hours ago. Sarah's chest tightened. Isabella. That was the woman's name. The baby's mother. She scrolled to the photos. There were hundreds. Isabella with the baby. Isabella pregnant. Isabella with a man who must have been the father. He was older, maybe mid-40s, with dark hair going gray at the temples and sharp features. In every photo where he appeared, there was an intensity to him, a sense of power that came through even in casual snapshots. One photo made Sarah's blood run cold. It was a newspaper clipping, saved as an image. The headline read, "Moretti family under federal investigation." Below was a photo of the same man from the personal pictures, identified as Vincent Moretti. Moretti. Sarah knew that name. Everyone in New York knew that name, even people who tried to stay far away from anything criminal. The Morettis were organized crime, had been for generations. They controlled everything from construction to waste management to who knew what else. This baby, this innocent child now sleeping peacefully in her arms after finishing his bottle, was the son of a Mafia boss. "Oh my God," Sarah breathed. "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." Her first instinct was panic. Her second was to put the baby down, grab her own bag, and run as far and as fast as she could. But when she looked at his face, so peaceful in sleep, she couldn't do it. Isabella had died protecting him. Those men in the diner had been hunting for him, and Sarah had promised to keep him safe. She gently laid him on her bed, building a fort of pillows around him, and pulled out her laptop, a refurbished model she'd bought 3 years ago. She typed Isabella Moretti into the search engine. The results were limited. A few society page mentions from years ago, attending charity events as Vincent Moretti's wife, a wedding announcement from 7 years prior, but nothing recent. Nothing that would explain why she'd been running, why she'd been so terrified, why she'd entrusted her baby to a stranger in a diner. Sarah tried different searches. Vincent Moretti, Moretti family, Queen's crime. The results painted a picture of a powerful organization, the kind that operated in the shadows of legitimate business. There were rumors of violence, of territory disputes, of people who crossed them disappearing, but nothing about a baby, nothing about Isabella. Hours passed. Sarah sat at her small table, the laptop screen casting a blue glow across her face, while the baby slept on her bed. Outside, the rain continued to fall, and somewhere in the city, police were investigating a scene 2 blocks from Rosie's diner. Finally, around 4 a.m., Sarah found something. It was a news article from 6 months ago, buried in the local section of a New Jersey newspaper. Businessman's infant son reported missing after car incident. The article was brief. Vincent Moretti had reported his 3-month-old son missing after a car accident on the Garden State Parkway. His wife, Isabella, had been driving. Both she and the baby were gone when emergency services arrived. Police suspected a planned disappearance. Vincent Moretti had offered a substantial reward for information. Sarah's mind raced, piecing together a story from fragments. Isabella had run away with her baby. She'd been in hiding for months, but someone had found her. Maybe the same people who'd sent those men to the diner. Maybe rivals of Vincent Moretti. Maybe even people working for Vincent himself. And in her last moments of freedom, her last moments of life, Isabella had made a choice. She'd gone to a random diner and trusted a stranger to do what she could no longer do, protect her son. The baby stirred, making small sounds that Sarah was learning meant he'd wake soon. She closed her laptop and went to him, lifting him carefully. He needed changing. She figured that out quickly. And another bottle. As dawn began to break over New York City, painting her small window with gray light, Sarah sat on her couch with this baby who'd completely upended her life in a matter of hours. She should be terrified. She should be calling the police, turning him in, washing her hands of this whole mess. Instead, she found herself singing softly, a lullaby her own mother had sung to her years ago, before everything had fallen apart, before she'd ended up alone in the city with nothing but a waitress job and a studio apartment. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. The baby's eyes began to close. His tiny fist wrapped around Sarah's finger. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. Mama. The word stuck in her throat. She wasn't his mama. She was a stranger who'd made an impulse decision that could destroy her life, that probably would destroy her life. But as she looked at his peaceful face, Sarah made a decision. Just for today. She'd keep him safe, just for today. She'd call in sick to work. She had some sick days saved up. She'd figure out what to do. Research. Plan. Maybe there was a way to contact Vincent Moretti safely, return his son, make sure he'd be protected. Just for today. Sarah had no way of knowing that just for today would become tomorrow, and the next day and the next. That the baby she'd named Miguel, because she couldn't keep calling him the baby, and she didn't know his real name, would become her son in every way that mattered. That 5 years would pass before the truth finally caught up with them. But on that rain-soaked November morning in her tiny apartment in Queens, Sarah Martinez made a promise to a baby who wasn't hers, to a mother who'd died trusting her, to herself. She'd keep him safe, whatever it took. Outside, the city was waking up. Sirens continued to wail in the distance. The rain finally began to slow. And somewhere, Sarah knew, people were searching. Let them search. She had a baby to protect. The October morning sun filtered through the thin curtains of Sarah Martinez's 1-bedroom apartment in Sunset Park, Brooklyn. It was a modest upgrade from the studio in Queens she'd fled 5 years ago. 2 rooms instead of 1, a kitchen with actual counter space, and a bedroom door that closed. Small victories that had taken years of double shifts and careful budgeting to achieve. Sarah stood in front of the bathroom mirror, her reflection showing the wear of those 5 years. At 33, she had more gray hairs than she'd like to admit. Permanent dark circles under her eyes that no amount of concealer could hide, and worry lines etched across her forehead. But when she heard the sound of small feet padding across the hardwood floor, all of that faded away. Mama, wake up, it's Saturday. Sarah smiled despite her exhaustion and opened the bathroom door to find Miguel standing there in his dinosaur pajamas, his dark curls sticking up in every direction, those big brown eyes bright with excitement. At 5 years old, he was all energy and curiosity, tall for his age and beautiful in a way that sometimes made Sarah's heart ache with fear. Good morning, mi amor, she said, scooping him up despite her aching back. He was getting heavy, growing so fast. What's all this excitement about? Park day, you promised. We're going to the big park with the swings. Miguel wrapped his arms around her neck, and Sarah breathed in the scent of his strawberry-scented shampoo. That's right, I did promise. Sarah had managed to get the weekend off from both her jobs, the diner where she worked mornings and the cleaning company where she worked evenings. 2 full days with Miguel, a luxury she rarely afforded herself. But first, breakfast, what do you want? Pancakes with chocolate chips, please, please, please. Sarah laughed, setting him down. Okay, but just a few chocolate chips. We need to save room for real food. As Miguel ran to the kitchen table, chattering about all the things he wanted to do at the park, Sarah allowed herself a moment of gratitude. 5 years. They'd made it 5 years. Every single day she'd expected someone to knock on her door, to recognize Miguel, to take him away. But somehow, through a combination of caution, luck, and sheer determination, they'd built a life together. She'd moved 3 times in those first 2 years, always paying in cash, always using fake references from friends who owed her favors. She'd avoided hospitals, kept Miguel out of any official systems, taught him at home using library books and educational programs she found online. It wasn't legal. It probably wasn't even right. But it was safe. Sarah mixed pancake batter while Miguel colored at the kitchen table, his tongue poking out in concentration as he filled in a picture of a T-Rex. The apartment was small but cozy, decorated with Miguel's artwork on the walls and photos of the two of them at various parks and playgrounds around Brooklyn, always careful to avoid famous landmarks that might make them easy to locate if someone was looking. "Mama, why don't I go to school like the other kids?" Miguel asked suddenly, not looking up from his coloring. Sarah's hand stilled on the spatula. They'd had this conversation before, but it never got easier. "Remember what I told you, baby? You're learning at home with me. It's called homeschooling, lots of kids do it. But Marcus goes to school. He says they have a playground and a library and art class." Marcus was a boy from the building, 6 years old, who Miguel sometimes played with in the courtyard under Sarah's watchful eye. "And you have all those things too," Sarah said gently, flipping a pancake. "We go to the library every week. You do art projects and there are playgrounds everywhere. It's not the same." Miguel's voice was small and Sarah's heart broke a little. She served the pancakes and sat down across from him, taking his small hand in hers. "I know it's not, sweetheart. I know you want to be like the other kids. And maybe next year we can look into some programs, but for now, this is how it has to be. Do you trust me?" Miguel nodded, but Sarah could see the disappointment in his eyes. He was getting older, asking more questions, noticing more differences between his life and the lives of other children. How much longer could she keep this up? How much longer before he needed things she couldn't provide while staying hidden? After breakfast, they got ready for their park day. Sarah dressed Miguel in clothes she'd bought from the thrift store, always avoiding anything too expensive or distinctive. She'd learned early on to make him look like any other working-class kid in Brooklyn, nothing that would draw attention. She pulled her own dark hair back into a ponytail, put on her oversized sunglasses, a habit she'd developed, always hiding her face a little, and grabbed the backpack she'd prepared with snacks, water, and the small canister of pepper spray she'd started carrying 3 years ago after a scare in the subway. "Ready, Mama?" Miguel asked, bouncing on his toes by the door. "Ready, baby." The walk to Sunset Park took 15 minutes, and Sarah spent every second of it scanning their surroundings. It had become second nature, checking for cars that lingered too long, people who looked at them too closely, any sign that someone might recognize Miguel. The paranoia had faded somewhat over the years, but it never completely disappeared. The park was already busy with families enjoying the crisp autumn morning. Leaves crunched under their feet as they walked toward the playground, the Manhattan skyline visible in the distance across the water. Miguel ran ahead to the swings, and Sarah settled onto a bench where she could watch him, her hands wrapped around a cup of bodega coffee. "Is this seat taken?" Sarah looked up to find a woman about her age, pushing a stroller with a sleeping toddler. "No, go ahead." "Thanks, I'm Jenny. We live over on 5th Avenue. The woman sat down with a grateful sigh. "These mornings at the park are the only thing keeping me sane." "Sarah, I know what you mean." Sarah kept her answers short, friendly but not too friendly. She'd learned not to make real friends, not to get too close to anyone who might ask questions. "Is that your son? The one on the swing?" Jenny asked, smiling as she watched Miguel pump his legs, trying to go higher. "Yeah, that's Miguel. He's gorgeous, those eyes. You must have to beat off the modeling scouts." Jenny laughed, but Sarah felt ice in her stomach. "He's camera shy," Sarah said quickly. "Hates having his picture taken." It was true in a way. Sarah had taught Miguel to turn away from cameras, to hide his face when people tried to take photos at the park. She'd made it into a game. Let's be ninjas, invisible to cameras. And he'd thought it was fun. but she'd seen the confusion in his eyes when other kids happily posed for their parents' phones. They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching their children play. Sarah was just starting to relax when she noticed a man standing by the park entrance. He was tall, wearing an expensive suit that looked out of place in the playground, and he was watching the children with an intensity that made Sarah's skin crawl. Her heart began to race. She stood up abruptly. "Miguel, time to go, baby." "But Mama, we just got here," Miguel protested from the swings. "I know. I'm sorry. I forgot we have an appointment. Remember?" Sarah's voice was tight, and Miguel, sensitive to his mother's moods after 5 years together, climbed off the swing without further argument. "Everything okay?" Jenny asked, concerned. "Fine. Just running late. Nice meeting you." Sarah grabbed Miguel's hand and headed for the exit opposite from where the man stood, her pace quick but not running. Don't attract attention. Don't make a scene. She risked a glance back. The man was still standing there, but he wasn't following. Maybe she was being paranoid. Maybe he was just a father waiting for his own child. But Sarah had learned to trust her instincts, and right now, every instinct was screaming danger. "Mama, you're hurting my hand," Miguel said softly. Sarah loosened her grip immediately. "Sorry, baby. Let's just get home, okay?" They took a different route back to the apartment, Sarah constantly checking over her shoulder. By the time they climbed the stairs to their floor, her hands were shaking so badly she could barely get the key in the lock. Inside, she locked the door. Deadbolt. Chain. The security bar she'd installed herself. Miguel went to his room to play with his toys, used to his mother's occasional paranoid episodes, while Sarah stood at the window peeking through the curtains at the street below. Nothing. No black SUVs. No men in suits. Just normal Saturday traffic in Brooklyn. "You're losing it, Sarah," she whispered to herself. "You're seeing threats everywhere." But that night, after Miguel was asleep, Sarah pulled out the box she kept hidden in the back of her closet. Inside was everything from that first night. The phone, long since dead and useless. The diamond bracelet, which she'd never been able to bring herself to sell despite the money it would bring. The remaining cash, carefully rationed over the years. And newspaper clippings she'd collected. Articles about the Moretti family. She'd followed the news religiously for months after taking Miguel. There had been coverage of Isabella's death. A mugging gone wrong, the official story said, though Sarah knew better. But there was nothing about a missing baby. Nothing about a search. It was as if Miguel had simply ceased to exist in the official record. That should have brought Sarah comfort, but it only raised more questions. Why hadn't Vincent Moretti torn the city apart looking for his son? Why hadn't there been news reports, Amber Alerts, FBI involvement? The man had resources, power. He could have found Miguel if he'd really tried. Unless he didn't want to. Unless Miguel was safer being thought dead. Sarah studied a photo from an article dated 6 months after that terrible night. Vincent Moretti at some charity event. Looking older, harder. The caption mentioned his wife's tragic death earlier that year. No mention of a child. "Who are you really?" Sarah whispered, looking at the photo. "And what kind of life did your son escape from?" The following Tuesday, Sarah was at her morning job at Mel's Diner in downtown Brooklyn. A different establishment from Rosie's in Queens, a new life, new routines. She'd been working there for 3 years, long enough that the other servers knew her, but not well enough to ask too many personal questions. "Order up, Sarah." Mel, the owner, called from the kitchen window. Sarah grabbed the plates and delivered them to booth 7, plastering on her customer service smile. 2 eggs over easy bacon, wheat toast. Can I get you anything else?" The businessman barely looked up from his phone. "I'm fine." As Sarah turned to leave, someone at the counter caught her attention. A woman, mid-50s, well-dressed, was asking Mel questions. "I'm looking for someone who used to work in Queens at a diner called Rosie's, about 5 years ago. Do you know anyone who might have worked there?" Sarah's blood ran cold. She quickly moved behind the counter, pretending to refill coffee pots, her back to the woman. "Can't say I do," Mel was saying. "Why? You trying to find an old friend?" "Something like that. Family matter." The woman slid a business card across the counter. "If you hear of anyone, I'd appreciate a call. There's a finder's fee." Sarah didn't breathe until the woman left. She waited 10 minutes, then made an excuse about feeling sick and left early, texting her evening cleaning job that she had a family emergency and couldn't make it. She picked Miguel up from Mrs. Chen's apartment. Yes, the same Mr. Chen from that night, who'd moved to Brooklyn 2 years after Sarah and had become Miguel's unofficial grandfather and occasional babysitter. He was the only person who knew the truth. the only one Sarah trusted. "Sarah, what's wrong?" Mrs. Chen asked, seeing her face. Mr. Chen had passed away a year ago, a heart attack, and his widow had taken over the role of protective family friend. "Someone's asking questions at the diner." Sarah's voice was shaking. Mrs. Chen's expression hardened. "Take him. Go to your sister in Pennsylvania like we planned." They'd made an emergency plan years ago, a place to run if things went bad. Sarah's sister, her only remaining family, had a small house outside Philadelphia. She didn't know the full story, but she'd agreed to take them in if needed. "I don't know if I'm overreacting," Sarah said, watching Miguel play with Mrs. Chen's cat, oblivious to the adult conversation. "Better to overreact than to underreact, dear. You know what's at stake." Sarah did know. She'd known for 5 years. Every day she kept Miguel was a day she was essentially kidnapping him, keeping him from his biological father. It didn't matter that she'd done it to protect him, that she loved him as if he were her own. In the eyes of the law, she was a criminal. But more than that, if Vincent Moretti ever found them, what would he do? Would he believe that Sarah had saved his son? Or would he see her as the woman who'd stolen 5 years he could have had with his child? That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She lay in bed listening to Miguel's soft breathing from his room and tried to make a decision. Run to Pennsylvania? Wait and see if anything else happened? Try to contact Vincent Moretti herself? The last option terrified her most of all. How did someone even contact a man like that? Walk into one of his businesses and ask to see him? That seemed like a good way to end up in the Hudson River. She must have dozed off eventually because she woke to sunlight and Miguel bouncing on her bed. "Mama! Library day, you promised we could get new books." Sarah groaned, checking her phone. Wednesday. They went to the Brooklyn Public Library every Wednesday afternoon, part of their routine. Miguel loved the children's section, and Sarah had gotten to know some of the librarians well enough to exchange pleasantries but not personal information. Okay. Let me wake up first, monster." She tickled Miguel, and his laughter filled the small apartment, momentarily chasing away her fears. At the library, Miguel ran straight to the picture book section while Sarah browsed the new releases, always keeping him in her line of sight. A librarian named Janet, an older woman with kind eyes, approached her. "Sarah, there was a man here yesterday asking about children who come in regularly. He had a photo, wanted to know if we'd seen this boy." Janet's voice was low, concerned. Sarah felt the world tilt. "What? What did you tell him?" "I told him I couldn't give out information about patrons." "But Sarah..." Janet glanced at Miguel, then back to Sarah. The boy in the photo looked a lot like Miguel. Younger, maybe a baby photo enhanced to show what he might look like now. "What did the man look like?" Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "Tall, gray hair, expensive suit, very intense. Left his card in case I remembered anything. The same description as the man from the park." He hadn't been a figment of Sarah's paranoia. Someone was looking for them. After 5 years of silence, someone had found their trail. "Thank you for not saying anything," Sarah managed. Janet touched her arm gently. "I don't know your story, dear, but I've been a librarian for 30 years and I've learned to recognize when a mother is protecting her child. Just be careful." Sarah gathered Miguel and his stack of books, checked them out with shaking hands, and headed home. Every person on the street looked like a threat. Every car that slowed down made her heart race. Back in the apartment, with the door locked and secured, Sarah made a decision. She pulled out an old laptop she'd bought at a pawn shop, never connected to their home Wi-Fi, only used on public networks. She'd set up an anonymous email account years ago, just in case. Now she typed, "I have information about Isabella Moretti's death. I need guarantees before I come forward." She sent it to an email address she'd found in one of the old articles about the Moretti family, a business contact. Then she cleared the browser history, shut down the laptop, and sat on her couch, wondering if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. For 3 days, nothing happened. Sarah went to work, came home, took care of Miguel, and waited. She started packing a bag, just in case they needed to run. Clothes, money, Miguel's favorite stuffed dinosaur. On Saturday morning, there was a knock at the door. Sarah's heart stopped. She looked through the peephole and saw a well-dressed woman, alone, holding a briefcase. "Ms. Martinez, my name is Rebecca Sato. I'm an attorney. I received your email. I'd like to talk to you about a legal matter concerning a child in your care." Sarah's hand shook as she opened the door, keeping the chain lock engaged. "How did you find me? May I come in? I promise you I'm here to help." Vincent Moretti would like to meet with you under conditions that ensure your safety and the child's well-being. I don't know what you're talking about, Sarah said, but her voice lacked conviction. Rebecca smiled sadly. Ms. Martinez, Sarah, we know you have Miguel. We've known for about 6 months. We've been trying to find the right way to approach you to make sure this situation is handled properly, for everyone's sake, especially the child's. 6 months. They'd known for 6 months and hadn't taken him, hadn't sent police, hadn't done anything except quietly search. Why? Sarah asked, tears starting to fall. Why wait? Why not just take him? Because Mr. Moretti wants to do this right. He understands that you've been caring for his son, that you've kept him safe when others failed. He wants to meet you, to talk. That's all. Just talk. Sarah looked back at Miguel, playing with his dinosaurs on the living room floor, completely unaware that his entire world was about to change. If I say no, then we continue this conversation through legal channels. But that gets messy, involves authorities, creates a record. Mr. Moretti wants to avoid that if possible, for Miguel's sake. Sarah's mind raced. 5 years of running, of hiding, of being afraid, and now it was over. She could keep saying no, could grab Miguel and run to Pennsylvania, but they'd found her once. They'd find her again. And maybe, just maybe, this was the opportunity to give Miguel what he really needed. His real family, his real name, a normal life. When? Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Tomorrow, noon. There's a restaurant in Manhattan, neutral ground. Bring Miguel. Mr. Moretti wants to see his son. After Rebecca left, Sarah sat on the floor next to Miguel watching him play. He looked up at her with those big brown eyes, his father's eyes she realized now, and smiled. Mama, why are you crying? I'm not crying, baby. I love you so much. You know that, right? I know, Mama. I love you too. Miguel hugged her, his small arms around her neck, and Sarah held on tight, wondering how many more times she'd get to hold him like this. That night, after Miguel was asleep, Sarah sat at her kitchen table and wrote a letter. She'd probably never give it to him, but she needed to write it, needed to explain. Dear Miguel, by the time you read this, you'll be old enough to understand. I'm not your real mother. Your real mother was a woman named Isabella, and she loved you so much that she gave her life to protect you. I was just a waitress who happened to be in the right place at the right time. I know what I did was wrong. I should have called the police, should have done the right thing legally. But when I looked at you, when your mother trusted me with your life, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't. These 5 years with you have been the best years of my life. You gave me purpose, taught me what it means to love someone more than yourself. I hope you can forgive me for keeping you from your real family. I hope you understand that everything I did because I love you. You deserve a real life with a real family, with opportunities I could never give you. I hope your father can give you that. I hope he can love you the way you deserve to be loved. You'll always be my son, even if I was never really your mother. Love always, Sarah. She folded the letter and put it in the box with Isabella's phone and the bracelet. Tomorrow she'd meet Vincent Moretti. Tomorrow she'd have to hand over the most precious thing in her life. Tomorrow everything would change. Sarah walked to Miguel's room and stood in the doorway watching him sleep, his dark curls spread across the pillow, one hand clutching his stuffed T-Rex, peaceful and safe in the only home he'd ever known. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry I couldn't keep you safe forever. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm. Somewhere out there, Vincent Moretti was preparing to meet the woman who'd raised his son for 5 years. And somewhere, Sarah knew, there were still people who wanted Miguel for reasons she didn't fully understand. The next 24 hours would determine everything, whether she'd done the right thing all those years ago, whether Miguel would be safe, whether she'd be punished for her crime of loving a child who wasn't hers. Sarah returned to the living room and sat by the window, watching the street below, waiting for sunrise, waiting for the moment when her carefully constructed world would finally, inevitably, come crashing down. But no matter what happened tomorrow, no matter what Vincent Moretti said or did, Sarah knew one thing with absolute certainty. She loved Miguel. She'd loved him from that first night in the rain, and she'd love him until her last breath. And sometimes, love meant letting go, even when it broke your heart. The restaurant was in Midtown Manhattan, an upscale Italian establishment that Sarah would never have dreamed of entering in her normal life. The kind of place where a single appetizer cost more than she made in an evening shift at the diner. As the taxi pulled up to the elegant entrance, Sarah's hands were trembling so badly she could barely unbuckle Miguel from his booster seat. Mama, "This place looks fancy," Miguel said, his eyes wide as he took in the marble facade and the doorman in his pristine uniform. "Are we celebrating something?" Sarah forced a smile, smoothing down his hair. She'd dressed him in the nicest clothes he owned, khaki pants and a button-up shirt she'd found at a consignment shop. She'd agonized over every detail that morning, wanting him to look good, wanting Vincent Moretti to see that she'd taken good care of his son. "We're meeting someone very important," Sarah said, taking his hand. "I need you to be on your best behavior, okay? Can you do that for me?" "Okay, Mama." Miguel squeezed her hand, sensing her nervousness. Rebecca Sato was waiting just inside the entrance, looking professional in a charcoal gray suit. "Sarah, Miguel, thank you for coming. Mr. Moretti has reserved a private dining room upstairs. This way, please." As they followed Rebecca through the restaurant, Sarah noticed the other diners, business executives, wealthy couples, people who belonged in places like this. She felt profoundly out of place in her simple dress from Target, her worn flats that she'd tried to polish that morning. Miguel pressed closer to her side. "Mama, I don't like this place. It's too quiet." "It's okay, baby. We won't be long." Sarah hoped that was true. She had no idea what this meeting would bring, how long it would take, or how it would end. The private dining room was on the second floor, accessed through a discreet corridor away from the main restaurant. Rebecca knocked twice, then opened the door. The room was smaller than Sarah expected, intimate even, with a single table set for four. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the Manhattan skyline, and soft classical music played from hidden speakers. But Sarah barely noticed any of that. Her entire attention was focused on the man standing by the window. Vincent Moretti looked exactly like his photos, but somehow more real, more imposing. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair silvering at the temples. He wore an impeccably tailored suit that probably cost more than 3 months of Sarah's rent. But it was his eyes that caught her, dark, intense, and filled with an emotion so raw it made her breath catch. He was staring at Miguel. For a long moment no one moved. No one spoke. Vincent's eyes swept over Miguel, the dark curls, the brown eyes, the shape of his face, and Sarah saw his jaw clench, saw his hands tighten at his sides. "Papa?" Miguel whispered, confused, using the Italian word Sarah had taught him meant father when they'd read a book about Italian families. "Is that man crying?" Sarah looked and saw that Miguel was right. Silent tears were streaming down Vincent Moretti's face as he stared at his son, the child he hadn't seen in 5 years, hadn't held since he was 3 months old. "Mr. Moretti," Rebecca said gently, "perhaps we should all sit down." Vincent seemed to shake himself. He pulled out a handkerchief and wiped his face, clearing his throat. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "Yes. Yes, of course, please sit." Sarah lifted Miguel into a chair, settling beside him. Vincent sat across from them, unable to take his eyes off the boy. Rebecca took the fourth chair, pulling out a folder from her briefcase. "Miguel, this is Mr. Moretti," Sarah said carefully, her voice shaking. He wanted to meet you." "Hello?" Miguel said politely, the way Sarah had taught him. But he pressed closer to Sarah, uncertain about this strange, intense man staring at him. Vincent's face crumpled slightly at his son's wariness. "Hello, Miguel. You've gotten so big." An awkward silence fell. Sarah didn't know where to begin, what to say. "How did you start a conversation like this?" Rebecca cleared her throat. "Perhaps I should explain the situation. Sarah, Mr. Moretti has been searching for his son since November 2018, when Isabella, Miguel's mother, took him and disappeared. 6 months ago, through private investigators, we identified you as the woman who was working at Rosie's diner the night Isabella died." "How?" Sarah asked. "I was so careful. Security footage from businesses near the diner," Rebecca explained. "It took years to piece together, but eventually we found you leaving the diner that night with an infant. From there, it was a matter of tracking your movements, finding where you'd relocated." Vincent leaned forward, his eyes never leaving Miguel. "Why?" His voice broke on the word. "Why did you take him? Why didn't you call the police? I could have had 5 years with my son." Sarah felt anger flare through her fear. "Your wife came into my diner terrified for her life. She died 2 blocks away that same night. Those men who came looking, they weren't police, and they weren't there to help. I didn't know who to trust. So you decided to keep my child? To raise him as your own?" Vincent's voice was rising and Miguel flinched. "I decided to keep him safe." Sarah shot back, then caught herself seeing Miguel's frightened face. She lowered her voice. "I'm sorry. I know what I did was wrong, legally. But those men, whoever they were dangerous, and you," she gestured at Vincent. "You're not exactly a safe option either, are you?" Vincent's jaw tightened. "What did Isabella tell you?" "Nothing." She barely spoke. "But I'm not stupid. I know who you are, Mr. Moretti. I've read the articles. I know what your family does." "You know nothing," Vincent said coldly. Then he seemed to catch himself, glancing at Miguel, who was watching them both with wide, worried eyes. "I'm sorry. This is difficult." Rebecca intervened smoothly. "Perhaps we should establish some facts. Mr. Moretti, I have the DNA testing materials you requested." Vincent nodded, pulling a small kit from his jacket pocket. "I need to be certain. Not that I have doubts." He looked at Miguel, his expression softening impossibly. "He has his mother's nose, my eyes. But legally, we need proof." "DNA test?" Sarah asked, her stomach sinking. This was it. The moment that would prove Miguel wasn't hers. Would never be hers. "It's non-invasive," Rebecca assured her. "Just a cheek swab. The lab can have results in a few hours with the rush processing Mr. Moretti arranged." Sarah looked down at Miguel, who was watching the adults with confusion. "Baby, this doctor needs to do a quick test. It won't hurt, I promise. Can you be brave for Mama?" Miguel nodded, though he looked uncertain. Vincent moved slowly, carefully, as if approaching a frightened animal. He knelt beside Miguel's chair, bringing himself to the boy's level. "Hi, Miguel. I know this is strange, but I promise this won't hurt. Can you open your mouth for me? Just like this?" Vincent demonstrated, and after a moment, Miguel copied him. Sarah watched as Vincent gently swabbed the inside of Miguel's cheek, his hands shaking slightly. Then he took his own sample, sealing both swabs in separate containers that Rebecca immediately placed in a courier bag. "I'll have these sent to the lab now," Rebecca said, stepping out of the room. Alone with Vincent and Miguel, Sarah felt the weight of the moment. 5 years of secrets, of running, of loving a child who wasn't hers. All of it was ending. "Are you hungry, Miguel?" Vincent asked, his voice gentler now. "They have very good food here." "I like chicken nuggets," Miguel said. "And French fries." A smile tugged at Vincent's lips. The first real smile Sarah had seen. "I think we can arrange that. Sarah, would you like to order something?" The meal that followed was surreal. They ordered chicken nuggets for Miguel, simple pasta dishes for the adults, and tried to make conversation. Vincent asked Miguel questions. "What's your favorite color? What do you like to play? Do you have friends?" Miguel answered, warming up slightly to this strange man who looked at him with such intensity. Sarah could see Vincent cataloging every detail. The way Miguel bounced in his seat when excited, how he insisted on arranging his French fries by size before eating them, the gap in his smile where he'd lost his first tooth. "He's lactose intolerant," Sarah found herself saying. "And he has nightmares sometimes about loud noises. I think he remembers that night even though he was so young." Vincent's expression darkened. "Isabella was running from people I thought I could trust. People in my own organization who wanted to use my son as leverage." He glanced at Miguel, who was focused on his food. "I've spent 5 years rooting them out, making sure it's safe for him to come home." "Is it?" Sarah asked quietly. "Is it really safe? Safer than it was? But I won't lie to you. There are still risks. There will always be risks with who I am, what I do." Vincent set down his fork. "But I can provide for him in ways you never could. Security, education, opportunities." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. I know I can't give him those things, but I can love him. I do love him. I can see that." Vincent's voice was softer now. "The way he looks at you, calls you Mama. You've been good to him. Better than I had any right to expect from a stranger." They ate in silence for a while, Miguel chattering about a book Sarah had read to him, unaware of the life-changing conversation happening around him. Rebecca returned about an hour later, a sealed envelope in her hand. The results. Vincent took the envelope with shaking hands. He opened it slowly, pulled out the paper, and read. Sarah watched his face transform. Relief, joy, grief, all mixing together in an expression so raw, it hurt to witness. "He's mine," Vincent whispered. 99.9% certainty. He's my son. Sarah had known it was coming, but hearing it confirmed still felt like a punch to the gut. Miguel wasn't hers, had never been hers. She'd stolen 5 years from this man, kept a father from his child. "I'm so sorry," she said, tears streaming down her face now. "I'm so sorry. I thought I was protecting him, but I took him from you. I took all those years. You saved his life," Vincent interrupted, and to Sarah's shock, his own eyes were wet. "If you'd called the police, if you'd turned him over to anyone connected to my world, he would have been used against me, or worse. You kept him hidden, kept him safe when I couldn't, when I failed." "Mama, why are you crying?" Miguel asked, tugging on her sleeve. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, baby. No, you didn't do anything wrong." Sarah pulled him into her lap, holding him tight. "You're perfect. You've always been perfect." Vincent watched them, and Sarah could see the longing in his face, the desire to hold his son, to make up for 5 lost years. But he stayed seated, giving them space. "What happens now?" Sarah asked, though she dreaded the answer. "Now we need to discuss Miguel's future," Rebecca said, pulling out legal documents. "Mr. Moretti is Miguel's biological father, which gives him full legal rights. However, given the unusual circumstances, we'd like to propose a transition period." "Transition?" Sarah's heart leaped with desperate hope. Vincent leaned forward. "Miguel doesn't know me. To him, I'm a stranger. Taking him away from you immediately would be traumatic. I don't want to hurt my son any more than he's already been hurt by this situation." "What are you proposing?" Sarah asked carefully. "I want you to come live in my home. Both of you. There's plenty of room, and Miguel will feel safer having you there while he gets to know me. We'll introduce the idea gradually, that I'm his father, that his mother was a woman named Isabella, who loved him very much." Sarah's mind reeled. "You want me to live with you? I want my son to be happy and feel secure. Right now, that means you." Vincent's expression was complex. "I'm not a fool, Sarah. I know you love him. I can see it in everything you do. And he loves you. Forcing a sudden separation would be cruel. For how long? As long as it takes. Weeks, months, until Miguel is comfortable with me, until he understands his true identity. And then," Vincent paused, "then we'll discuss what comes next." "And if I say no?" Rebecca spoke up. "Then we pursue legal custody through the courts. Mr. Moretti will get custody. That's not in question. But it will be traumatic for Miguel, and there will be legal consequences for you regarding the unofficial adoption." It wasn't really a choice. Sarah could see that, but at least this way, she'd have more time with Miguel, time to prepare him, to help him understand, to say goodbye properly. "I need to think about it," Sarah said. Vincent nodded. "I understand. But Sarah, there's something you need to know. The people who were after Isabella, after Miguel, they're not all gone. Some of them are still out there, and if they learn that my son is alive, that he's been found, they'll come for him," Sarah finished, her blood running cold. "I have security, resources, people I trust with my life. I can protect him in ways you simply cannot. Someone followed you to the library last week, did you notice?" Sarah's heart stopped. "No, my people did. They've been watching you both, making sure you were safe while we arranged this meeting. But I can't protect you from a distance forever. And once word gets out that my son has been found, and it will get out, you'll both be targets." Sarah looked down at Miguel, who had finished his meal and was drawing on the paper placemat with crayons a server had brought. So innocent, so unaware of the danger surrounding him. "If I agree to this, what would it look like? Where do you live?" "I have a penthouse in Manhattan and a house upstate, away from the city." "I think the house would be better for Miguel. More space, a yard, privacy." Vincent's voice softened. "A real home." "Can I have until tomorrow to decide?" Sarah asked. "Of course. Rebecca will drive you home. Here." Vincent reached into his jacket and pulled out a phone. "This is secure, untraceable. My number is programmed in. Call me with your decision, or if you need anything. Anything at all." Sarah took the phone with numb fingers. This was really happening. After 5 years of running, of hiding, it was all catching up with her. As they prepared to leave, Vincent approached Miguel one more time. He knelt down, bringing himself to eye level with his son. "Miguel, I'm very glad I got to meet you today. You're a special boy." "Thank you, Mr. Moretti," Miguel said politely. Then, with a child's innocent directness, "Why were you crying before?" Vincent's breath caught. "Because I was very happy to see you. Sometimes people cry when they're happy." "Oh, Mama does that sometimes too." Miguel considered this. "Will I see you again?" "I hope so. Would you like that?" Miguel looked at Sarah, seeking her approval. She managed a nod, and Miguel turned back to Vincent. "Okay. Maybe next time we can get ice cream instead? This food was too fancy." Vincent laughed. The sound rough but genuine. Ice cream sounds perfect. In the elevator down to the street level, Sarah held Miguel's hand and tried to process everything that had happened. The DNA test, the offer to live with Vincent, the revelation that they'd been watched, that danger was still out there. "Mama, I liked that man," Miguel said as they settled into the car Rebecca had called for them. "He seemed sad, though. Do you think he's lonely?" Out of the mouths of babes. "Maybe, baby. Maybe he is." The drive back to Brooklyn passed in a blur. Rebecca sat in the front with the driver, giving Sarah and Miguel privacy. Miguel fell asleep against Sarah's shoulder, exhausted from the unusual day, and Sarah stroked his hair, memorizing the feel of him, the weight of his head on her shoulder. When they arrived at the apartment, Rebecca walked them up. At the door, she handed Sarah another card. "My personal cell is on there. Call anytime, day or night. I know this is overwhelming, but Mr. Moretti meant what he said. He wants what's best for Miguel, and he recognizes that right now, what's best includes you." After Rebecca left, Sarah carried a sleeping Miguel to his bed. She sat beside him in the dark, watching his chest rise and fall with each breath. 5 years. 5 years of being his mother, his whole world. And now a man with every legal right to him was offering her a temporary reprieve, a chance to ease Miguel into his new life, to be there for the transition. But what happened after? When Miguel no longer needed her, when he'd bonded with his real father, when he understood that Sarah was just a waitress who'd made a choice one rainy night. Sarah pulled out her phone, her regular phone, not the secure one Vincent had given her, and called the one person she could talk to. "Mrs. Chen? It's Sarah. I need to talk." 20 minutes later, Mrs. Chen arrived with tea and cookies, settling into Sarah's small couch, while Sarah poured out the whole story. The meeting, the DNA test, Vincent's offer. "So what's holding you back?" Mrs. Chen asked when Sarah finished. "I'm scared. Scared of losing him. Scared of this world I'd be entering. Scared that I'm making another mistake." "Sarah, dear, you saved that boy's life 5 years ago. You gave him love, stability, everything you had. But you always knew this day might come." Mrs. Chen took Sarah's hand. "The question isn't whether you love him. We both know you do. The question is, what's best for Miguel now?" Sarah thought about her tiny apartment, her 2 minimum-wage jobs, the life of struggle she could offer Miguel. Then she thought about Vincent's resources, the safety he could provide, the opportunities, the education. "He deserves more than I can give him," Sarah whispered. "He deserves love, which both of you can give him. Maybe this isn't an ending, Sarah. Maybe it's a new chapter." After Mrs. Chen left, Sarah sat in the dark apartment, the secure phone Vincent had given her in her hand. She thought about Miguel, sleeping peacefully in his room. She thought about Isabella, who'd trusted her with the most precious thing in the world. She thought about Vincent, a father grieving 5 lost years. And she thought about the men in black SUVs, the danger still lurking, the life Miguel would always have to navigate as Vincent Moretti's son. At midnight, Sarah made her decision. She dialed the number programmed into the secure phone. Vincent answered on the first ring. "Sarah, I'll do it," she said. "I'll come live with you, help Miguel transition. But I have conditions." "Name them." "I need to keep working. Maybe not both jobs, but something. I can't just be dependent on you. And I need my own space, my own room, privacy. I'm there for Miguel, not as anything else." "Agreed. What else?" Sarah took a deep breath. "When the time comes, when Miguel doesn't need me anymore, you let me go. No legal trouble, no consequences. I just want to disappear quietly. Let Miguel have his life with you." There was a long pause. "What if Miguel still needs you? What if he always needs you? Then we'll deal with that when it comes. But I won't be his mother anymore, Vincent. You're his father. Isabella was his mother. I was just someone who filled in for a while. You're more than that." Vincent's voice was rough. "But I understand. When can you be ready to move?" "Give me 3 days. I need to quit my jobs, pack our things, say goodbye to our life here. I'll send a car on Thursday. Pack everything you want to keep. I'll make sure you have everything you need at the house." "Vincent," Sarah said before he could hang up, "thank you for not hating me, for understanding why I did what I did. How could I hate the woman who saved my son?" Vincent's voice was thick with emotion. "I'll see you Thursday, Sarah. Both of you." After she hung up, Sarah sat in the silence of her apartment, the place where she'd raised Miguel for 3 years, where they'd built their little life together. In 3 days they'd leave it all behind. She walked to Miguel's room one more time, standing in the doorway watching him sleep. "I hope I'm doing the right thing," she whispered. "I hope this is what's best for you, baby. Because God help me, I don't know anymore." Outside, the city hummed with its endless energy, and somewhere in a Manhattan penthouse, Vincent Moretti sat alone, staring at the DNA test results, at the proof that his son was alive, that he'd been found. Two people, both loving the same child, both trying to do what was right. In 3 days, their worlds would collide completely, and nothing would ever be the same again. Spring sunlight filtered through the large windows of Vincent Moretti's estate, illuminating the spacious living room where Sarah sat watching Miguel play in the garden outside. 6 months had passed since that fateful meeting in Manhattan, and the transformation in all their lives had been profound. The house was nothing like Sarah had imagined. Yes, it was large and expensive, but Vincent had made it a home. There were photos on the walls now, pictures of Miguel, of Isabella holding him as an infant, of the three of them together from recent months, a family, pieced together from broken parts. "He's getting so tall," Vincent said, joining Sarah by the window. "He'd changed too, softer somehow, the hard edges worn down by fatherhood. I can barely keep him in clothes." Sarah smiled. "He grows like a weed, always has." The first weeks had been difficult. Miguel had been confused, sometimes frightened by the changes. Night after night, Sarah had sat with him, explaining gently that Vincent was his papa, that his first mama, Isabella, had loved him so much she'd given everything to keep him safe. "Why can't I have two mamas?" Miguel had asked one night, tears streaming down his face. "You do, baby," Sarah had whispered, holding him close. "You have your mama Isabella in heaven, and you have me, and you have your papa who loves you very much." Vincent had stood in the doorway that night listening, and later told Sarah he'd never heard anything more beautiful or heartbreaking. Slowly, Miguel had adjusted. He'd started calling Vincent Papa, naturally, running to him when he came home, asking him to read bedtime stories. The bond between father and son had grown strong and genuine, and Sarah had stepped back, letting it happen, even as her heart broke a little more each day. "Sarah, I need to talk to you about something," Vincent said now, his tone serious. Sarah's stomach tightened. This was it, the conversation she'd been dreading. Miguel didn't need her anymore. It was time for her to leave. "I know," she said quietly. "I've been expecting this." "Miguel's settled now. He has you. I should go." "No," Vincent said firmly. "That's not what I was going to say. Sarah, look at me." She turned, surprised by the intensity in his eyes. "These past 6 months watching you with Miguel, seeing the kind of person you are, you're not just someone who helped my son. You're his mother too, the one who raised him, who taught him kindness and resilience. And he needs that. He needs you. Vincent, I'm not asking you to leave, I'm asking you to stay, permanently, not as an employee or a temporary arrangement, as family." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I don't understand. Miguel asked me last night why you have to live in a different part of the house, why you eat breakfast with us but then disappear to work in the afternoons." Vincent stepped closer. "He wants you here, Sarah, and so do I. What about when he's older? When he understands what I did, that I kept him from you? Then we'll tell him the truth, that you saved his life when no one else could, that you loved him enough to give up everything for him, and that you loved him enough to bring him home when it was safe." Vincent's voice was gentle. "You're not losing him, Sarah. You never have to lose him." Through the window, Miguel spotted them and waved enthusiastically, his face bright with joy. Sarah waved back, her heart so full it hurt. "I have a job offer for you," Vincent continued. "I'm establishing a foundation in Isabella's name, helping women and children in difficult situations. I want you to run it. Use your experience, your compassion to help others the way you helped Miguel." "Vincent, I'm just a waitress. I don't have experience running a foundation. You have something better. You have heart, and you'll have all the support and training you need." He paused. "Plus, it comes with a permanent residence here. Your own suite, your independence, but close to Miguel. A real home." Sarah looked out at Miguel, now chasing butterflies through the garden, carefree and happy, safe, loved. Everything she'd dreamed for him during those 5 years of hiding. What about the past, the legal implications? Already handled. Rebecca worked with the authorities. Given the circumstances, there won't be charges. Isabella's will, which we found among her things, actually named you as Miguel's guardian if anything happened to her. She'd planned this, Sarah. She wanted you to protect him. Sarah's breath caught. She knew. She chose me. She chose well. Miguel burst through the door, grass-stained and grinning. "Mama! Papa! Come outside! I found a frog." Both adults moved simultaneously, and Miguel grabbed both their hands, pulling them toward the garden. Sarah looked at Vincent over Miguel's head, and he smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached his eyes. Maybe they weren't a traditional family. Maybe their story had started with tragedy and fear. But looking at Miguel, holding both their hands, chattering about his frog discovery, Sarah realized that family wasn't about biology or legality. It was about love and sacrifice and choosing each other every single day. "Okay, baby," Sarah said, squeezing Miguel's hand. "Show us this amazing frog." As they walked into the sunshine together, father, son, and the woman who'd saved them both, Sarah finally understood. She hadn't stolen 5 years from Vincent. She'd given Miguel the gift of survival, of love, of a chance at this moment. And now, they had all the time in the world to be the family they were meant to be, together. 1 year later, Miguel started at a private school, excelling in everything he tried. Sarah's foundation helped hundreds of families, giving her purpose beyond anything she'd imagined. And Vincent learned that being a father was the greatest role he'd ever had. On Miguel's 7th birthday, he asked for something special, adoption papers making Sarah legally his second mother. Vincent arranged it immediately. 3 people bound by fate and choice, proving that family isn't always what you're born into. Sometimes, it's what you build from love.